On the anniversary of our relationship, my girlfriend actually left me for her first love. Seeing the video of them in bed, I was so angry that I went to confront her. She was silent for a while. She said coldly, "He's much better than you. You know what?" Then she got into her first love's car. I stood in the rain, looking at the couples on the street. I felt so lost. I ended up deleting all of Vivian Morgan's contacts. A month later, I bought a jewelry necklace at a new product launch. When Vivian heard about it, Vivian called me proudly. She said she knew I couldn't let her go and gave me a chance. Let me take the initiative to come over and apologize. I just hummed softly next to the green tea little girlfriend in my side to come over and ask, "Brother, did I not do a good enough job?" Her friends all messaged me to tell me I've managed to win Vivian. I didn't reply to any of them. I just posted a photo of the marriage license in my circle of friends. That day, Vivian and her first night together. It was also our third anniversary. I prepared a perfect ceremony for the proposal. I dressed up a bit. I chose a well-fitting black suit. I went out on an early fall night. I waited downstairs for almost 2 hours. I finally waited for Vivian. Her silver Porsche was elegantly parked on the curb. I avoided the curious stares of the neighbors. I walked quickly to the car. I politely opened the door for Vivian. As soon as I got in the car, I tried to hold Vivian's hand, as if she felt something was wrong. She glanced at the bodyguard in the rearview mirror. Then she frowned and pushed my hand away. The car is heading to the restaurant. On the way, Vivian's cell phone rings. The screen says it's Lucas Bennett calling, since he's been back home. Every time I'm alone with Vivian, he always calls out of the blue. It's not nice to be in a three-way, but Vivian doesn't care. She even said I was too sensitive when I complained. She doesn't even mind her male friends she grew up with. It was the same this time. Vivian pushed my hand away to stop me. She answered the phone. Lucas' suppressed gasp came from the other end of the line. "Vivian, I'm at the Starlight Club." Watching Vivian's expression change, I felt a chill in my heart. I could hear the broken words clearly. "Lucas has been drugged. The situation is very serious. He said no other woman could help him. Only Vivian could help him." Vivian replied, "Okay, I'll be right there." After she finished, she looked at me. She asked me to take her to the Champs Club. Of course I didn't want to do that. Do I have to send my girlfriend to someone else myself? "Vivian, don't forget, it's our first anniversary. This is unacceptable to me." She stared at me angrily. Her eyes were cold, like she was asking me if I'd let her die. Then she said, "Don't worry, I'll be back soon. We have a lot of anniversaries to celebrate together." Ethan Carter. But not long after I got home, I got a video. In the video, in a dimly lit room, Vivian was lying next to Lucas. The two of them were close together. When he made the first move, Vivian didn't refuse. Instead, she enjoyed it, even though Lucas was catering to the situation. Scene was still disgusting. The room was quiet, only some ambiguous sounds. I was so angry that my hands were shaking. I called Vivian immediately. No one answered the phone. I dialed again. The third time I finally got through. "Vivian, let's break up." When I said this, my heart hurt like being cut by a knife. The 3 years I was with Vivian are still lingering in my mind. Vivian is a strong character. Her family background has given her a sense of superiority since she was a child. But she was very gentle with me. Until the day Lucas returned home, I began to feel uncomfortable. It was Valentine's Day. I brought Vivian to a fancy restaurant. It was supposed to be a romantic time for both of us. I didn't expect Lucas to show up out of the blue. He sat next to her. When he saw the sauce on the corner of her mouth, he offered to help her wipe it off. Vivian never liked racing. She thinks it's too dangerous. I invited her to go to the track. She always refused. It was her birthday. I waited at the apartment all afternoon. I saw her coming back in her racing suit. Turns out, she had gone to the racetrack to be with Lucas. My anger erupted all of a sudden. The more I spoke, the lower my voice became. In the end, my voice got lower and lower, and finally it took on the sound of suppressed anger. Vivian on the other end of the phone kept quiet. When I finally stopped, she asked coldly, "Have I finished?" Her tone was impatient, like a pot of cold water falling from the sky. It felt like everything was laughing at my pity. All the excitement calmed down at once. My eyes were locked on the picture of her and Lucas on my cell phone. My heart was empty. As much as I hate to admit it, I didn't want to admit it, but when I said it just now, I was fooled into thinking that she'd be as gentle as before, explaining everything to me. Her words made me feel like my previous expectations were ridiculous. All of a sudden, I felt that none of this makes any sense. I answered softly, and then there was silence. She hung up the phone. 60 minutes later, I received a photo from an anonymous source. In the photo, Lucas walked into the hotel with his arm around Vivian's waist. Lucas' hand was holding Vivian's hand tightly, and she didn't resist. She didn't resist. It seemed natural. I leaned against the cold wall. I closed my eyes. Tears flowed uncontrollably. After a while, I reluctantly went to wash my face. face. After I adjusted my mood, I confessed to my parents that Vivian and I broke up. I told them what happened. They were a bit angry and they were heartbroken. They kept comforting me, looking at my parents' concerned eyes. I felt very warm in my heart. I'm grateful that I grew up in a loving family. It makes me not want to get involved with people who don't love me, although I may not have let go completely, but I'm sure I'll get better sooner than expected. Vivian dropped Lucas off downstairs and got ready to leave. Before leaving, Lucas grabbed her wrist and he asked her if she wanted to come up and sit for a while. The ambiguity between them becomes more and more obvious. Vivian understood what he meant, but thinking of Ethan's angry voice, she shook her head and she refused. Lucas laughed softly and said, "What's wrong? In a hurry to coax your little boyfriend? Vivian, you're so nice to him. A man has to be a little more restrained. Look at him now. He wants to break up with you whenever there's a problem. He really doesn't know what he's doing." Vivian felt a little annoyed. Vivian felt a little annoyed in her heart and frowned slightly. Her original idea of comforting Ethan gradually disappeared. After a brief goodbye, she turned around and left. Back in the car, she realized that the dialogue box with Ethan was still empty. She was even more annoyed, so she went to a bar with her best friend to relax. Word travels fast in the community. As soon as they entered the booth, a few of her girlfriends started to tease her. "Gee, I'm envious. She's so envious. You have a handsome and rich boyfriend, and a first love with a great body by her side. Why aren't you happy? Has Ethan already said goodbye to you?" Vivian sat down gracefully, her long legs folded, coldly swept a glance at them. "When did you guys become so nosy?" A few people look at each other in disbelief. They were quiet. "Vivian, are you angry now? Were we right? Honestly, you're so close to Lucas before you broke up with Ethan. Although it's not a big deal in our circle, but it's a bit too much. Aren't you worried that Ethan will really leave you this time?" Vivian picked up her wine glass and took a sip of red wine. She said lightly, "He won't. I've coddled him too much. It's time for him to realize who's in charge." The others laugh and shake their heads. That's what they all mean. 3 days later, my mom set me up on a blind date. Before I knew it, my mom put me in a white dress. "Just go and take a look. Everyone is waiting. If you don't go today." Mom cannot explain to people. I have no choice. I could only agree, but I thought to myself, I must talk to them clearly when I get there. After all, Vivian and I just broke up. Although I'm not really in love with her, but I'm not ready to start a new relationship yet. When I arrived at the restaurant's top floor box, according to the address my mom gave me, I saw a girl in a white sweater sitting there. She had a very innocent face. She looked like she had just graduated from college. She was 22 or 23 years old. More importantly, I thought she looked familiar until she saw me come in. Her eyes lit up. "Ethan." It dawned on me that she was the daughter of my mom's good friend, Aunt Linda. She's the daughter of my mom's good friend, Aunt Linda. I remember when she was in college. She stayed at my house for a few days. It was summer vacation. She was only 18 years old because she didn't do well in school. Her mom sent her to my house. My mom told me her name was Chloe Adams. She's the youngest of the Adams family and a rebellious princess. The first time I saw her, she was wearing pink earrings on her ears. She was very lively and cute. She was followed by a group of girls. They were laughing about her being kicked out of the house, but she didn't care. She raised her eyebrows a little. She walked away without a care in the world. I was in college that year. I saw this scene from upstairs. I decided to avoid her. That stunningly beautiful face. I couldn't get it out of my head. When I saw her again, she was no longer as dazzling as before. "Chloe." When I recognized her, she had a flash of surprise in her eyes. She said, "Brother, it's me." I thought to myself, my father's vision is really unique. Even the girl in front of the house is not spared. This girl is 5 years younger than me. How can he ask me, an old man, to go after her? When we sat down, the food came one by one. It's all my favorite dishes. I wanted to say no. I didn't feel comfortable saying no. After a moment of silence, I asked a little awkwardly, "You are still so young. You're still so young, and you're going out on a blind date so early. Is it appropriate?" She stared at me. Her eyes were eager. "Brother, actually, I asked Mom to contact Uncle. Besides, I've grown up a long time ago." She looks so pretty. Her face is delicate. Her jawline is soft. Even in a wide white sweater, even in a wide white jumper, she's still very elegant. Small nose, pink lips, with a pair of clear and charming eyes. Her gaze followed me all the way, mind at a glance. I turned my face away and I started to bring up the fact that Vivian and I broke up. She bites her lips softly, still looking at me. "Let bygones be bygones. After all, my brother is single now. Isn't that right, brother? I've always liked you." I was surprised by that, but I couldn't ask too many questions. During the meal, she barely ate. She was just busy serving me food. I was a little uncomfortable. I told her to eat too. She looked at me. "It's okay. Even if you don't like me, I still want to be good to you." I could only keep my head down and eat. When I was was leaving, she suddenly pressed me against the door. Her eyes narrowed. She stared at me. Then she smiled a little. What's wrong? She reached out and touched the corner of my mouth. She touched the corner of my mouth, which was stained with sauce. She's not short. I could see her beautiful collarbone if I looked down a little. Luckily, she took her hand back quickly, and then she pouted that she wanted to take me home. She didn't wait for me to say no. She pulled me into the car. Chloe drives a white Mercedes. When she got home, she got out first and opened the door for me, but I got stuck in my seatbelt. She was puzzled. She came over and tried to help me out. At that moment, the scent of jasmine and sandalwood was all around my nose. It was intoxicating. When I heard a click, I hurriedly tried to stand up. My shoulder accidentally touched her face. I panicked and pushed her away to run. I didn't realize I'd fallen off the bike. Chloe tried to catch me. But I crushed her to the ground. There were cries of horror from passers-by. I scrambled to turn my head. I accidentally kissed her on the mouth. The cries get louder. When I looked up, my dad and a classy-looking lady are standing next to each other. This is going too fast, isn't it? Young people these days are so passionate. This couple really looks good together. Son, you've really picked up a good match. I sat up quickly. I saw Chloe blushing. She whispered, Mom. Me, Chloe's mom, gracefully came out to break the awkwardness. Does this mean you guys are a good match? I was about to give an explanation. I saw that Chloe had nodded. I look over at her. She whispered, Brother, this is my first kiss. All three pairs of eyes looked at me expectantly. I looked at their expectant eyes, and I could only nod my head in agreement. Things have come to this point. Can only be like this. Holding her and kissing her right in front of her mom. I can't really explain it. When I got home, I got a message from Chloe. Brother, if you don't feel well, don't push yourself. I was a little embarrassed, but come to think of it, this is a good opportunity. She's pretty. She's got a good background. It's worth a try. And so, Chloe and I started a relationship. She was always full of energy. She took me to lots of places, like playgrounds and spas and horse farms and archery ranges and beaches. Everything. At the movies, she always had her eyes on me, like a good little kitten, but she's a bit small. Every time I mention it, my dad would always mutter something. It's nice to be young. You don't know how to appreciate it. That day, it was Chloe's birthday. She invited me to her birthday party. I suddenly remembered, I've never given her a gift. Seeing the invitation to the new product launch in my hand, I decided to pick out a birthday gift for her. I heard there's an 8-figure jewelry necklace tonight. Chloe's uncle runs a big company in Shanghai. Due to health reasons, he never had any children. Instead, he loves Chloe and his juniors as if they were his own children. The family doesn't really lack these. However, I still want to buy this necklace for her. I didn't realize that Vivian's good friend Yolanda liked it too, but I ordered it first. She didn't notice me at first. When I stood up, Yolanda Nelson looked at me with surprise and said, Ethan, you're here to check out the new merchandise? Did you reserve that limited edition necklace? I nodded. Yolanda wasn't like Vivian's other friends. She's quite kind to me, but we were still strangers. I was in a hurry to go to Chloe's birthday party. Seeing me fiddling with the car keys, Yolanda quickly left in a knowledgeable manner. The Starlight Club is the most exclusive private club in Marina. It was the perfect place for Chloe's birthday party. I went home and changed into a dark blue tailored suit. With her favorite dark tie. I had my hair styled. I sprayed on the perfume she gave me. Chloe offered to pick me up, but I politely declined. After all, her girlfriends were already there. It's not appropriate to leave. It wouldn't be right to leave. When I got to the door of the box with my gift, I found the opposite door half open. I could hear Vivian's voice. In this city, it's not uncommon to run into acquaintances. I heard Yolanda's voice say, Vivian, guess who I met today? Vivian was sitting in the center. I could see her face clearly. Who was it? Yolanda smiled and said, it was Ethan. Vivian's fingers stopped slightly. So he was at the launch party and bought that limited edition necklace. I love that necklace too. I wanted the brand to keep it. I didn't expect Ethan to buy it outright. It's a women's model. I think it was meant for you. Vivian leaned back on the sofa, a faint smile hanging at the corner of her mouth. It seems that he really spends a lot of money in order to please me. He even bought a limited edition. Yolanda took another sip of wine. He's very devoted to you. Vivian, don't you really want to get back together with him? He hasn't even looked for you this month. Vivian smiles softly. She thinks he's just having a tantrum. It looks like he's starting to understand. He should learn to control his emotions in the future. And stop being so capricious. When he comes to me to apologize, I'm sure I'll forgive him. A tough guy like him, I have to give him some face. Vivian's words are easy to understand. Everyone's expressions were different. They all looked at Lucas, even though he was sitting next to Vivian at the moment. Lucas' face couldn't help but show a hint of embarrassment. I don't want to continue listening. I turned around and went to the next box. Chloe's Chloe's friends surprised me, although they each had their own style. Some were arrogant, some were gentle, but they were all very friendly to me. Chloe must have spoken to them in advance. The men there were also very welcoming. They talked to me about ball games and designer watches. Gradually, we became close. A couple of the guys blushed and came up to me. A couple of guys came over, blushing, and leaned in close to talk to me on purpose. Chloe's cheeks were flushed, looking a little upset. She pulled me to her. I haven't talked to him today. Don't try to steal him from me. The box goes quiet. Her friend rubbed her ears and asked, "Who's talking?" Chloe glanced at her coldly. Chloe glanced at her coldly and shut up. At the end of the party, I realized Chloe had been watching me. I asked her if she wanted to go for a walk. Her eyes lit up. "I'd love to." Before I could finish my sentence, she took my hand. There was a drunk woman next to me who kept staring at me. She was looking at me with an unkind look in her eyes. Chloe put her coat on me. She said, "Brother, wait for me here. I'll get the car." I promised her, but she didn't come back for a long time. When I got to the parking lot, I saw her confronting that woman. Both of them clearly had the smell of gunpowder. "Don't you dare look at her like that again." The woman was intimidated by her aura. She stepped back. When she heard my footsteps, she looked back, like a kitten that made a mistake. Then she took the opportunity to escape. Seeing Chloe's frustration, I couldn't help but smile. I leaned over and kissed her on the forehead. "Don't be mad. You're the only one I like. Little wildcat." Her eyes lit up for a second. She pulled me into the car. As soon as we got in the car, she kissed me on the lips. "Brother, wildcats are like that. Chloe and I have been in love for 3 months. Her mom has been urging us to get a license lately. We grew up together. We know each other very well. The Adams family is very well brought up. Her mom is very comfortable with our future." I looked at Chloe in the kitchen. I thought it would be a good idea to get married. She's sweet and caring. She's smart and capable. She can take care of people. She knows how to care for others. She was the perfect companion. Suddenly, I blurted out, "Chloe, marry me." She froze, looked up at me, just as I was trying to explain my proposal. Little Wildcat had pounced on me. She asked, "Brother is finally willing to give me a name?" I nodded. Chloe's eyes were glistening with tears, and like a good little cat, she gently touched me with the bridge of her nose. She touched me with the bridge of her nose and pressed her red lips to mine. Although she had permission, she was still very restrained. No further action. Before leaving, she lowered her head. Her fingertips were still a little bloody. Seeing her slender shoulders, I seemed to understand something in my heart. We soon went to get a marriage license. On the way home, she carefully put the red book into her handbag. When we arrived at our old house, Grandma was overjoyed. She gave Chloe an heirloom jade string. The wedding arrangements were left in the hands of Chloe's uncle. He has many years of experience in the wedding industry. The Adams family is well known. Mr. Adams was a politician when he was young. Mr. Adams was a political figure in his youth. He told me privately if Chloe has any problems. He told me privately that if Chloe had any problems, she must tell him. When I left the old man's study, I saw a half-broken cane whip behind the door. Chloe whispered to me. Chloe whispered to me that it was broken. She broke it when she was beaten. Inside the new house, I couldn't wait to carry Chloe to the low cupboard by the door. I kissed her deeply. I wrapped my arms around her waist. I took her into my arms. She was all tense, like a frightened deer. She wrapped her arms helplessly around my neck. I was at my mercy. "Ethan," I whispered. My voice was a little hoarse. A strong flame flickered in my eyes. Suddenly I remembered what my father said. "When you're young, you should have a good time." As we collapsed together on the soft couch, she finally found the courage to touch me. There were tears in her eyes. I had a wry smile on my face. A soft sound escaped her throat and the corners of her eyes reddened. And I realized that seeing the one I love shedding tears, it turned me on so much. Soon, I had the whole situation under control. For the rest of the day, she begged me for forgiveness with tears in her eyes. I was greedy for more, but I treated her as gently as I could. Eventually, she couldn't hold out any longer. She pleaded with me through sobs. Her breasts rose and fell gently as she breathed. Seems to be full of love. On our wedding day, I felt energized, but not for long. I got a call from the company, said there was an urgent project that needed my attention. I rushed to work right away. Every day I came home exhausted. She understands how hard I work. She didn't bother me too much, until one day when I came home early. I heard her whispering my name in the bathroom. My face got hot. When I pushed open the door, I pushed the door open, and there was still that longing in her eyes. She was completely naked. I couldn't help but gulp saliva. He smiled slightly and took her to bed. Married life with Chloe was very happy. All the bad times of the past were long gone. One day, he received a strange phone call. It was Lucas. Lucas asked, "Does he know why Vivian does everything he says, and sleep with him? You didn't really think we were just childhood friends, did you?" He said it with an air air of indifference. He said it with a smug smile at the corner of his mouth. I looked at the cup of espresso in front of me. I got a little sick of it. I pushed it away. I couldn't help but think of Chloe's adorable jealousy this morning. I didn't want to see her, but Chloe snuggled up in my arms and said, "It's time for you to deal with the past. I understand that my brother has some worries in his heart. I'll always be there for him, unlike that big sister. I'm not like that big sister who only knows how to watch him feel sad. Although I don't have any feelings for Vivian now. I'm still a little upset. This kind of mind is not against Vivian as a person. It's about her and Lucas. It really makes me feel bad. I once suspected that Lucas and Vivian were having an affair. After all, they grew up together. When you're young, there's always some special emotion that comes up." Lucas seemed to be ready for it. He smiled and took out a pile of confession letters from his bag. He said, "You know what? Vivian has always liked me, but I never said yes to her because I think she's a bit childish. Ethan, she likes more mature men. That's why she chose you. You're just a substitute because he can't have me. That's why he chose you." He had a little smug look in his eyes. I looked at the letters quietly. They were full of Vivian's love for him. All my doubts were cleared up at once. The last bit of attachment to Vivian disappeared. "So you are a very special person in her heart. No wonder she can't get over you. A person is obsessed with what he can't get, but doesn't want to let go, knowing that there is no hope, but still stubbornly entangled." Lucas sneered. "Ethan, this is reality. She's always chasing my shadow. Do you think she really loves you? But it's just that I'm the one who's taking the hit." The phone vibrated. There was an unknown number on the screen, but the string of numbers let me know who it was. I answered it. I glanced at Lucas. I couldn't help but sneer. "Don't worry, I'm not interested in old things, and I won't hold on to them." As soon as the words left his mouth, a woman's shaky voice came over the phone. "Ethan, what do you mean?" I hung up the phone. I even blacked out the number. I got up and prepared to leave. Before I left, I grabbed Lucas by the collar. I pressed him against the wall. "You think you're something? You're just a coward being chased. If you're so self-righteous, why do you want to mess up my relationship? Let me tell you something. I'm already married. I have nothing to do with Vivian. You'd better leave me alone." Lucas' face turned sour. As I was leaving, I heard him rushing to call Vivian. Vivian said to Ethan, "Tell Lucas to apologize." I ignored it. I drove back to the office. When I sat down, I got a message from Chloe on my cell phone. "Brother, I put too much sugar in my cooking." And there's a picture. She's wearing a pink apron. Her long hair is tied up high. Her pale neck is very conspicuous. She's busy in the kitchen. She sent me a video. I clicked on it. I heard her clear voice. "Grandma, please stand a little further forward so Ethan can see how beautiful I am. She's so naughty. I'm getting misty-eyed. She still wants me to take the video. I have to keep Ethan's heart. That restless woman out there might regret it at some point." I couldn't help but laugh. She came right back with a few words, like a happy kitten, after exiting the chat. I saw that I had received several messages today. They're all about the same thing, all about Ethan. I didn't realize Vivian was willing to bow down. That's amazing. I can't believe that such a proud man would give in just because you apologized. Thinking about the day Lucas came home, everyone in the group was so happy. Everyone always sits Lucas next to Vivian on purpose. These things make me uncomfortable. Thinking about Chloe's message this afternoon, I updated my friend circle. "Married people, please do not disturb." I posted a picture of the two of us with our marriage license. It didn't take long. The assistant delivered the papers. I began to concentrate on my work. Vivian heard Ethan's remark. She was a little panicked. "What does secondhand mean?" He spoke coldly. "It's nothing like before." She wanted to say something. Ethan had already hung up. She dialed again. I found that the number had been blacked out. At this moment, she was busy working in Hong Kong City. Her heart felt inexplicably uneasy. It felt like the most important thing in her life was disappearing. The cell phone rang. She hurriedly picked up the phone. It was Ethan's call, but she heard Lucas' cold voice. "Vivian, I'm meeting with Mr. Ethan. Ethan, to help you reconcile." In the end, Lucas beat her in front of everyone and said he never wanted to see her again. All she could think about was Ethan. "It's like something's pulling at her," she said. Ethan apologized to Lucas, and then she regretted it, but she was like that before. When Lucas came back home, everyone was always trying to get her and him together, but they threw Ethan aside. Ethan didn't want to sit down. Lucas offered to make room. He slammed the door behind him. Everyone comforts Lucas. She also frowns and wants Ethan to apologize. Ethan looks embarrassed. Her lips are pursed. She sits directly next to Lucas. Ethan storms out of his seat. Someone asks her why she didn't go after him. She thinks to herself, Ethan, despite his stubborn temperament, but he'll come back in the end. It's on the side of a hill. He couldn't have gotten too far. So she grabbed her car keys and walked out the door. But then, Ethan was nowhere to be found. She suddenly remembered how Ethan looked when he was angry. He was usually very strong. Even when he was angry, he just pursed his lips and didn't say anything. She knew Ethan valued his face, so she bought the limited edition watch he always wanted. She also arranged a date at his favorite restaurant. Ethan saw that she was so sincere. Ethan finally gave in. Don't embarrass me again. This time should be similar. She thought of the diamond necklace Ethan gave her. She felt a little more comfortable. Suddenly, she got a message from Yolanda. She said, "Vivian, did you see Ethan's friend circle? He got married." The picture came out. It just rocked in front of my eyes. The glass fell from my hand. It shattered, and with that shattering sound her heart, like the cup, completely shattered. At 10 o'clock at night, I came out of the elevator. I saw a striking red Ferrari parked in front of the office. There were 3 numbers on the license plate. The owner must be a very rich man. "I haven't seen you for 3 months. Vivian has lost weight. The lines of her face are more obvious. She looks less gentle. She looks a little less gentle and a little more sharp." She was holding a long, thin lady's cigarette, leaning against the car door. Her eyes were tired. "He looks tired. He must have come back from the harbor city last night." Even though it was the end of the day, the young people passing by couldn't help but start talking. I frowned. I stopped carrying my beige briefcase. When Vivian saw me coming out, Vivian immediately locked her eyes on me. Seeing that I didn't move, she took a few steps towards me. "Ethan." I looked up. I nodded lightly. It was Vivian. Her fingers were trembling slightly and brow furrowed. "Is she still blaming me?" "Ethan, I'm so sorry. I know I was wrong. I shouldn't have kept making things difficult for you. I shouldn't have hurt your pride. I really missed you. I've regretted it every day for 3 months. Can you give me a chance? I promise I won't make you unhappy again." Vivian is actually very proud of herself. Even though I've always approached her in relationships before, I've been thinking, although she is 3 years younger than me, it's normal for her to be lively and not too understanding. But her tenderness never seemed to leave me. That day when I saw Vivian interacting with Lucas on the golf course, I felt like I was stabbed in the heart. It was especially hard. I had an argument with Vivian. She just glanced at me coldly. She just glanced at me coldly and went into the study without looking back. She also left a comment that she would wait for you to calm down. I guess she didn't feel too good about it. The next day Vivian sent me a limited edition watch. But I don't care about these material things. What I really wanted, she gave it to Lucas without hesitation. In the past, when I heard those words, I might have gone soft. But now when I see Vivian, I can only think of one thing. Missed love is like a faded flower. Even if it's beautiful, it's just a pile of withered memories. When the most cherished moment is lost, there's no point in compensating for it. I looked up at her. I said in a cold tone, "Vivian, let bygones be bygones. When we met again after the breakup, I don't want to pretend to be old friends. I don't want to bring up the past. For me, it's all in the past." She looked at me with a complicated look. Her tone softened. "I'll take you home." At that moment, I noticed a familiar figure not far away. The corners of my mouth unconsciously rose slightly. I looked at Vivian. My tone was a bit cold. "There's no need to bother. My family came to pick me up." She sighed and said, "Ethan, you're lying to me, aren't you? It's not over between us. Ethan, don't be so willful." She seems to believe that I can't let her go. But the flash of panic in her eyes reveals her unease. Chloe walked gracefully to my side. She took my hand. The necklace around her neck sparkled in the light. "It was a birthday present from me. Darling, I've kept you waiting." She went to buy your favorite tiramisu. She waited in line for a long time. Vivian's face immediately turned sour. When we were about to leave, Vivian suddenly stood in front of us. Chloe looked at her with a small smile, meaning please move over. I couldn't help but look at Chloe. Vivian is 29 years old, not old enough to be called big sister. Chloe has a sweet smile on her face. Chloe has a sweet smile on her face, but it makes you feel a little uncomfortable. Vivian obviously recognized Chloe. She froze for a moment, frowning. "Vivian, you too." Chloe pulls a red book from her handbag, and the corners of her mouth show a hint of a smile that just married look. Vivian's face immediately turns sour. She stares at me with eyes red, and her voice was a little shaky. "We didn't really break up. It's just a temporary Cold War. How can you just find someone to marry? Ethan, she's so much younger than you. You don't fit in at all." Chloe was furious. If I think it's right, it's right. Do I need you to interrupt me? You're saying we're not right for each other? Ethan and I are perfect for each other. 1 month. You call it a Cold War? Sister, didn't anyone tell you to pursue before it's too late? If you don't talk to him for 3 days, you should give up. Not to mention Ethan rejected you a long time ago. And she specifically reminded Vivian, "Sister, don't make trouble." Back in the car, Chloe's eyes are filled with anger. After closing the door, she put her arm around me like a baby. "Honey, I'm sorry. She's full of shit. We're perfect for each other. We're perfect for everything. Even the way we sleep." I blushed. I covered her mouth. What I didn't realize was, that night, Chloe took me to the old house. During dinner, she kept sighing. The people next to her didn't say anything, obviously aware of her habits. Their eyes were full of dissatisfaction. Only Chloe's grandmother asked her, "What's wrong with our Chloe?" Chloe was looking forward to that. She immediately and excitedly told me all about Vivian's visit. From what she said, Vivian seemed to be the outsider who wanted to break up our marriage. She seemed to be the outsider who wanted to break up our marriage and was focused on destroying our loving couple. Finally, she said, "If my husband runs away, I jump off a building." The old lady was heartbroken. How could that Morgan girl be like that? Trying to steal my granddaughter's husband? That's not good enough. You guys have to take care of this. I finally get it. People out there are saying, don't offend the Addams family. Don't offend Chloe. There's a good reason for that. She's like a spoiled little witch. After all, she was the only child in the family. Naturally, she's the favorite. I thought it was just the old lady talking. I didn't expect Chloe's two uncles to respond. Only Chloe's father gave her a cold stare, as if he was used to this kind of situation. He accepted it silently. The Addams family has very strict rules. Even the date palm at the door grows straight. I don't think they'll let it go so easily. I guess I chose to ignore something about Morgan Group. Now that avenue is closed. Vivian doesn't know how she got back. Only remembers what happened when she got back. The car crashed into the guardrail of the overpass. She called her assistant to take care of the aftermath. She was driven to a private hospital. Some people got the news from somewhere and rushed to the hospital to see her. They rushed to the hospital to see her. Her forehead was cut by broken glass. She was treated and bandaged. It was nothing serious. Everyone was relieved. Yolanda was the first to speak. "Vivian, didn't you go to Ethan? Why did you get into a car accident? Didn't I say it was probably because I was mad at you for posting that webcam? Why did you drive so fast?" Vivian remembered that hurtful group photo and that deep mark again. She and Ethan were really just having a cold war. She had thought that by giving him some time to cool off, that he would realize his faults and he wouldn't say anything about breaking up so easily. But things are always unexpected. Ethan's life really started a whole new phase. That day, she happened to be helping a drunk Lucas out of the club. Ethan suddenly told her to break up. Thinking back on what had just happened, the relationship between her and Lucas, it was the deepest betrayal to Ethan. With Ethan's last words still ringing in her ears, "I don't want a defiled woman." When she saw Ethan's name on her cell phone, she hesitated for a moment. In the end, she answered the phone. On the other end of the line, Ethan obviously already knew what happened. The first thing she wanted to do was find out who had given him the news. From the receiver came Ethan's suppressed roar. It was the first time she had ever heard him so angry and out of control. The first time she'd seen Ethan. He was wearing a well-tailored dark suit and he was very elegant in his demeanor. He was surrounded by Yolanda. He frowned slightly, but his demeanor remained calm and collected. There were whispers about his background, praising his demeanor. The sight of him being so polite and courteous, she couldn't help but feel a tightening in her heart. At the end of the party, she was pestered by some drunken men. Fortunately, Ethan appeared in time. He helped her out. He gently draped her coat over her head to shield her from the unfriendly stares. She was 5 years younger than him. He treated her like a child. He doted on her and protected her. Lucas had already left. She chose to stay with Ethan. First, she didn't think it would last long. 3 years have passed. She was still with Ethan. She didn't know what she was getting herself into. When Lucas returned to his hometown, she silently allowed him to approach her as a friend because of the friendship she had once shared. Every time Ethan argued with her, she was annoyed. That night, Ethan said he wanted to break up. She thought it was just a bet. She thought that if Ethan didn't contact her again after that, it would be the usual Cold War. Vivian's tears came to her eyes. The people around her looked at each other, and they looked at each other and made excuses to leave silently. Only Yolanda stayed, although she was still in charge of the Morgan family. Vivian's father left behind a lot of illegitimate children. This car accident must be handled with care. He's married. Vivian didn't think it would ever come out. She's always been calm. She never liked to show weakness in front of people, not to mention the fact that she never shared these personal matters with anyone. Yolanda asked, a little surprised, "Did you really get a license? Who did you marry?" Seeing Vivian's expression now, Yolanda wonders if there's any chance to get it back. Vivian looks out the window. That Addams family. Yolanda stopped talking all of a sudden. Although the Morgan family in Marina is very powerful, but the Addams family was the only one they couldn't mess with, especially Chloe. It's really too much to mess with. Vivian and Ethan's relationship is coming to an end. Looking at Vivian's tired face, he didn't say the words in the end. Shortly after, he got up to get lunch. After closing the door, Vivian took out her cell phone and sends Ethan a message. The screen showed that the other person was no longer your friend. It turns out that Ethan has long since blacked her out. No wonder she hadn't seen any messages from him. If she had been more proactive, go to him earlier, would the result be different? Vivian couldn't hold back any longer. Vivian couldn't hold it in any longer and covered her face as she cried. She remembered the day Ethan lost control. She waited impatiently for him to finish, coldly asked, "Is that enough?" Ethan was silent for a long time before answering. After that, there was no more possibility between her and Ethan. It was on the day Chloe and I got married. All the celebrities gathered at the marina. It wasn't a big crowd, but there was a lot of excitement. After all, there were complicated relationships. To my surprise, Vivian also came. She's lost a lot of weight. It's rumored that Lucas went abroad again. I'm not sure why. Everyone knows the Bennett family was bankrupt. In the past few years, people are still polite to Lucas. It's mainly because of Vivian's face. Not long ago, I saw Lucas being ridiculed by people in my circle. They said he was having an affair with a foreign student's girlfriend. Compared to our previous meeting, she looked a lot more haggard. When the host asked me to go on stage first, Chloe was so nervous that she was shaking. "Brother, don't run away at the critical moment." Her friends laughed and teased. "Don't worry, we'll watch the groom for you." I went to the front. I couldn't help but look back. After a few minutes, the door to the wedding hall slowly opened. Chloe walks out. I couldn't help but smile and say, "My daughter-in-law is so beautiful." His relatives laughed. Chloe walks up to me with the music. I looked at her and tears involuntarily flowed down my face. I hurriedly covered my eyes with my hand and lowered my head, not wanting her to see. The elders on the stage all had red eyes. Chloe hugged me gently. Her father half-jokingly said, "What a brat. He didn't even shed a tear when he married his daughter. Why are you crying?" I wiped away my tears. I raised my head. I took Chloe's hand from my father-in-law. I was so nervous my hands were shaking. Taking a deep breath before calming myself down, I put the ring on her finger. The wedding went off without a hitch. As I stepped off the stage, I looked around. I found Vivian in the corner with red eyes. During the toast, Vivian had already left her seat. The ballroom was buzzing with there was a great deal of activity in the ballroom. I don't know how long it will last, so we went back to the bridal room with the best man and maid of honor first. Chloe and the bridesmaids were taking pictures. I was waiting under a sycamore tree by the side of the road. I overheard a Bentley not far away. Vivian and Yolanda were chatting. They mentioned that they sent Lucas away because he did something he shouldn't have done. I often wonder, if we hadn't done what we did, I would probably be standing beside him now. He looks so energetic today, but he's not mine anymore. There was regret in his words. I sighed softly, turned to leave. Chloe saw me drive. The smile on her face never went away. When I picked her up at her house in the morning, she was wearing a new red Chinese cheongsam. Her hair was nicely coiffed. Her face was full of smiles. I rushed into the room. I picked her up like a general who's won a battle. Everyone around us cheered for us. What happened yesterday? It doesn't matter anymore. I took Chloe to the villa. When it was dark, I asked everyone else to leave. I took her to her room in a hurry. I gently unbuttoned her coat. I slid my fingers over her smooth skin. Her body trembled under my hands. I lowered my head and I kissed her lips. In the quiet of the night, softly humming a depressing melody that resonating with the moonlight outside the window. Her love was always so sincere and passionate. As I was about to fall asleep, I remembered a quote I read some time ago. I hope that the next time we shed tears is because of happiness. The first time I met Ethan, at a business reception, he was dressed in a black suit, standing in the corner, elegantly observing the new faces around him. Maybe he sensed that I was looking at him. He glanced my way once in a while. I was planning to leave after a while, because this kind of occasion makes me feel bored. But after seeing him, I decided to stay a little longer. He seemed interested in me. He looked my way from time to time. When the waiter passed by with the champagne, our eyes met in the air. Before leaving, he came to me and gave me a business card. He had long fingers. He had long, knuckle-dragging fingers. When I took the card, I accidentally touched his hand with my fingertips. My heart stuttered. It felt like an electric current running through my body. When I saw him again, it was at a business negotiation. He sat across the table. He looked very calm. I bit my lip. I tried to look calm. My heart was actually starting to rise and fall, but he already had a crush on someone. I could only suppress my feelings. At a couple of dinners, I found myself involuntarily looking at him a few more times. I gradually realized that his feelings for me didn't seem to be completely absent, so I started to find out about him privately. After wondering about him and that friend, I immediately told my mom that I liked him. After that, I asked her to arrange a blind date with him for me. Of course, my mom didn't agree, but I said if I don't marry him, I won't get married for the rest of my life. You're free to do whatever you want. I glanced at everyone in the living room who was listening. I couldn't help but laugh. I decided not to get married. I chose to be a mistress. I finally met with him. The Addams family would never approve of my deciding dishonorable role. Didn't expect that. He kissed me. Everything went smoothly after that. I played nice. He soon accepted me. I didn't realize that once I scolded a drunk woman. I thought he'd dump me. I panicked, but he just rubbed my head. The sunshine of that summer when I was 18. I finally got the sun on me again. From then on, he and I finally had a future.